If you're on calling post, you know that Tanya's mom, I think it is Tanya's mom, that she had emergency surgery. Was it gallbladder or? Yeah. Okay. So anytime it's rushed like that, it's kind of scary, and then on a Sunday to boot. So, so lots of prayer concerns. So it's all right. We'll get into that. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for all those that came on this beautiful evening. I'm sure there's things that people would like to be doing, but we thank you that they came to listen to some of your word tonight, and hopefully they'll be blessed. And we want to remember all those that need our special prayer this week. Ann York, as she's it's going to make 4 weeks that she's been in the hospital, and we thank you so much that she's doing real good right now. We just pray that she just goes speedily along and will be able to get out of the rehab center even before they thought she would. Also be with Dean and Faith as they are on the road, that they have no problems at all, that everything will go just as planned. Be with Tanya's mother. She's I'm not sure if she's still in the operation or not, but you know our prayer that you guide the hands of the surgeons, give them wisdom as they work with her, give her a complete and quick recovery. And thank you for finding a place for Dick Hurst, that he's got a place to go to. And we still pray that you'd cure that illness that he has, but if not, we sure thank you for finding this place for him. Ask you that you comfort Mona as she takes care of her dad. Now we ask that you be with this service. Give us open hearts, and if there's questions that they can be answered. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, last week we were on the war on creation, and in keeping with that, Michael and I are going to sing a song for you. Now, this is not exactly theologically correct, but it's okay. It's close enough. It's a good song. That's the reason I didn't want you to stand over there.
Loveliest of all was the unicorn. There were green alligators and long monkeys, some humpty-back camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, the sure pleasure born. The loveliest of all was the unicorn. The Lord seen some sentence and it caused him pain. He said, "Stand back, I'm going to make it rain." He said, "Hey, Brother Noah, I tell you what you do, build me a floating zoo. Take some of those green alligators and long monkeys, some humpty-back camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but sure as you're born, don't you forget my unicorn." Old Noah was there and answered the call, and he finished up the ark just as the rain started to fall. Marched in the animals two by two, and he called out as they came through, "Hey Lord, I got you green alligators and long monkeys, some humpty-back camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but Lord, I'm so forlorn, I just can't find no unicorn." And Noah looked out in the driving rain. The unicorns were hiding, playing silly games, a kicking and a splashing while the rain was pouring. Oh, them silly unicorns. There were green alligators and long neckies, some humpy-backed camels and some chimpanzees. Noah cried, close the door, for the started to storm. You just can't wait for those unicorns. The ark started moving, and it took the tide, and the unicorns looked up from the rocks and they cried, and the waters came down and sort of floated them away. And that's why you never see unicorns this very day. You'll see green alligators and long neckies, some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but sure as you're born, you're never gonna see no unicorn.
Some commentaries say that that they weren't really unicorns; they were goats with one horn like that. I don't know, but there's a lot of mythology out there, and there's some basis sometimes for that. So I guess we'll find out. But if they were there on the earth, they'd have been on the ark, and because God leads them. Led them into the ark. So that's the part that was not quite theologically correct. Okay, last week we started the war on creation. And is this thing working here? Where's the, so I can keep track? Is it up here? Will I don't. Yeah, yeah. What is it?
Should be in this front seat.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. We can see it just fine for me.
I bet you can. If I had eyes in the back of my head, we'd do okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize the other one wasn't on.
Is it the? There you go. Okay. Now, I know you guys were in there. Okay, so what we did, we're talking about the war on creation, and just to kind of recap where we were, I explained that there is a war to defend the Bible's account of creation. And the combatants are motivated believers who are willing to step out and tell the truth to the youth especially, and to those people who have an honest desire to know the truth. And the combatants that we have to fight against are what we call what I call the willfully ignorant, or surrogates of Satan. And we discussed several reasons why they're willfully ignorant, and most of it comes back to sin. They want to conduct their lives the way they want to run it and not have to be answerable to God. And they feel good about themselves if they can get people to agree with them, and the politically correct and people like that in the media. But the battleground is the youth and those that are seeking the truth. It doesn't do a whole lot of good. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's not going to do a whole lot of good to talk to people like Bill Nye, who I saw some video of him here just last week. I mean, he's just a pervert, and that's one of the reasons he wants to deny God, so he doesn't have that guilt. But there's people like that are willfully ignorant, and I don't think you're ever going to convince them. And we read some direct quotes from those people, that they know that what they're saying is impossible. They know it's impossible, and they come up, they're at least honest enough to say that, but they'd rather believe the impossible than to take the alternative, which is God. So the strategy for winning is to expose the surrogates for who they are and let their own words condemn them, because they do. They will condemn themselves. Then the other thing that, we can't prove scientifically that God exists. We can't prove that, or that he created the world. Evolutionists can't prove that the world was created by chance. Evolutionists can't disprove God. But the thing that we can do is we can disprove evolution. They can't prove it, we can't prove it, but we can disprove it. And that's part of what we're going to do tonight. And that was essentially where we were last week. So why is creation study an important strategy? Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. Creation shows God's unlimited power. Creation shows God's right to control the universe. Creation shows God's right to be worshiped. And creation shows that God is God. And we're going to cover each one of those items. Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. It was one of the first items. We had wisdom in making the heavens, and I can't read it from here. We'll read it here in just a little bit, but the reference, I think, is in Psalms 136, something like that. Wisdom in making the world, which is the earth. Wisdom was with God before creation. And this is one of the things that people say, that everything was created by chance. And I'd like for one of you guys to go in with me to Ace Hardware. And I want you to, without any plans or anything, I want you to get what you need and build me a Lexus. A Lexus. It's an expensive car I can't afford. It's by chance, just by chance. But God, see, he has a plan. And that's where 60% of scientists today say that they believe intelligent design. They don't all say God, but I don't know how they come up with intelligent design unless it is God, because you have to keep going back. If they say it's little green men from Mars, then where did they come from? It goes back to the law of causality, that there's a law of physics that says that for every effect, there's a cause in science. So if there's science, then they have to show us cause for the effect. So anytime they come up with something, you say, well, what caused that? What caused that? What caused that? We don't have to do that, because God stands outside of the space and time. He stands outside that. So God caused the world to be created and life. And God always was. So therefore, our argument is sound. Theirs isn't. It's flawed. Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. God made the heavens and the earth. For us to imagine the one who created the incredible, massive, infinite universe with its power and its complexity could also make something so small and delicate as a snowflake is unfathomable. And I was going to discuss this a little bit later, but I'll show you this right now, and we'll probably cover it again. But what you're seeing here is the Milky Way galaxy. I think we can see with telescopes, I think we can see 2 other galaxies. I think Andromeda, and I forget the other one. But this thing is massive. And the thing is, there's no end to it. Once you get past the Milky Way, once you get past Andromeda, and like there's more galaxies out there. It's never ending. And you think about how massively powerful God was. He could just speak it, and it came into being. And when you think about how the power of the sun that we have, and that's just a small little dot, and I've got a better picture here in a little bit, just a small little dot, that's our sun. Just a small little dot and all that. And everything's so massive, yet then he comes down to the little fragile snowflake. And a snowflake is like a fingerprint. There's no two the same. That takes planning. That takes somebody with a plan. You don't just walk into a hardware store and say, well, I'm going to build a Lexus. And boy, where'd I start? Well, I've got to have wheels. And can you imagine what you're going to come up with without a plan? God had a plan. He had wisdom. Psalm 136, 5 through 9. To him that by wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that stretched out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that made great lights, for his mercy endureth forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endureth forever. The moon and the stars to rule the night, for his mercy endureth forever. For us to imagine that, like I said, for someone who created everything else out there and then give such fine detail to what we see before us, it's just, it's mind-boggling. Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. He established the world, Jeremiah 51:15. All things that make up the earth are meticulous and intricate. Man with his genius cannot produce what was done by pure chance. God had a project plan. That's why I'm saying that they think, or the evolutionists think that everything just happened. And I've got some numbers for you in a little while to show you that is impossible. And that's where these scientists, or some of these humanists, will tell you that, yeah, we know it's impossible, but we're not going to believe God. But pure chance is like a tornado going through a junkyard and coming out with a car. I mean, that's pure chance. It's just not going to happen. But God did have a project plan. He started out with wisdom. He hath made the earth by his power. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. Wisdom with God before creation, Proverbs 8:22 through 31. Wisdom was the first works before the oceans, before the mountains, when the heavens were put in place from eternity. You see, it's when God spoke it, but there was wisdom behind it. Like us, he knew that we needed oxygen, we needed water, we needed warmth, we need cooling, we need the clouds from time to time. Well, without the clouds, it wouldn't have rain. And he had to have known all that kind of information before he created the earth. You know, it's not like, well, I'm going to create the earth. Oh, I forgot to make this. No, he had that all planned out beforehand. That was the wisdom. And I was smart enough to print this because I can't read that. The Lord formed this was Proverbs 8:22 through 31. This is what I'm going to read you. if you go back and read that chapter, it starts out talking about wisdom. So this version that I was reading had wisdom in quotes. And once you start at that chapter, you can see absolutely for sure that's what he's talking about, is wisdom. The Lord formed and brought me wisdom. The me is the wisdom. Forth at beginning of his way, for his acts of old. I, wisdom, was inaugurated and ordained from everlasting, from the beginning, before ever the earth existed. When there were no deeps, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains laden with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the land or the fields, or the first of the dust of the earth. When he prepared the heavens, I, wisdom, was there. When he drew a circle upon the face of the deep and stretched out the firmament over it. When he made the firm skies above. When he established the fountains of the deep. When he gave to the seas its limit and his decree that the waters should not transgress across the boundary set by his command. When he appointed the fountains of the earth. Then I, wisdom, was beside him as a master and director of the work. And I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited earth and delighting in the sons of men. So wisdom was with God. Of course, it's God's wisdom that did it. But he had to have that project plan. Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. God made the heavens, Psalms 136, 5 through 9. Now this is my little thing at the bottom says God is a God of order. And there's something called the Goldilocks Enigma. And I want to show you this because it's not real plain. See this little thing right there? There's a little dot about where that little red dot is bouncing. That's the sun. And you can't see the planets. Well, we got 8 now. I think we used to have 9. They said Pluto's not a planet. I think that's what it was. But anyway, you can't see that. But this is where people who are looking for life in the universe other than us. And what I'm telling you is the life as we know it. We're carbon-based life. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm fairly certain that this is all God made. But anyway, it's a real easy thing to do to discount this idea about these aliens like in Star Wars and Star Trek and things like that. Now these are scientists talking here, not Farley. I've read several books and this is part of it. You see this area in here? The heat and the radiation is so intense, and all galaxies are made this way. They're all this way. Some of them spiral to the left, some spiral to the right, but they're all in a spiral. This is so intense. Absolutely nothing in this area here. Nothing can exist for 2 reasons. One is the radiation is so intense that it would fry anything. Nobody can live there. No life can exist. The other thing is, you see these little clouds and like that? Those are not clouds. Those are stars, they're meteors, they're comets and all. That area is so busy that there's constant clashes of suns running into each other and that's all by design, because that's what makes this hot spot here. Well, right here is the earth. You see, there's not just a whole lot of stuff right in there. So we're in just the right spot not to have a lot of cosmic activity. We're far enough away from the center of this Milky Way galaxy, we don't get too much radiation. Now, anything outside this is too far away. Now you don't have enough radiation. So life as we know it can't exist out there. Now, there are some areas right in here that if there were other life forms, it could exist in here. But our Hubble telescope and radio telescopes and things like that, they've been searching, SETI I think they call it, has been searching for intelligent life for a long time, and nothing is there. So we can discount about 95% of everything in this Milky Way galaxy, that there's no way that life as we know it can exist. And I don't think they're going to find the other. But we're in just the right spot. Now, I didn't bring any charts for this, but it's the same way in our solar system, that we're in just the right spot. If we were just a little bit closer to the sun, it would be so hot that our crops and like that couldn't grow. If we were just a little bit further out, it'd be too cold. And this is what gets to be so ridiculous when they're talking about life on Mars, that it's too far out. They don't have enough atmosphere. They don't have enough oxygen. I'm pretty sure they don't have any water. Now they're saying, well, there's water below. Well, they don't know that. They're guessing it. But it's too far away. It's too cold. They can't grow crops. That's the reason it's a red, dusty planet. There's nothing growing out there. Venus and Mercury are way too close to the sun. It's a very hostile environment. But we're in just the right spot. But we're just far enough away that the sun gives us the heat that we need, the sunlight that we need. And it also holds us in orbit. But then we've got Jupiter on the other side that helps keep us from getting closer and closer to the sun. So everything is just right. That's what they call the Goldilocks enigma. Everything is just right. And like the Earth, it's tilted on its axis. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't have any seasonal changes. That's the reason we get the seasons that we do, and the snow and that type of thing. So God designed the earth for human habitation. And that can't be an accident. God's order. Creation shows God's unlimited wisdom. We're still on that. God's order. Everything is in order out there. I mean, you notice the spiral. You can see it's kind of round. All the gravitational forces that are out there keep us where we are. We are in an area where there's not a lot of meteors like that, and even if they do come through, and they have come through, that God gave us this atmosphere to burn them up before they come into into Earth. Now, there has been cases, as you well know, from some of the national parks that we have, that some did hit the Earth years and years ago. But there's a thing that's called entropy. And it says that you can't create order out of chaos. That's like if somebody would, well, you've seen it where they're blowing up buildings in New York when they want to build a new one, and they get this thing to implode, the thing falls down. You don't see anything that falls up and creates a building, But you don't get order out of chaos. And entropy says that everything winds down. If you get a new car, eventually it's going to wind down. It's not going to work as good as it did when it was new. We don't work as good as we did when we were new. So that's law, but God's order, it stays the same. We can count on the sun coming up every morning at approximately the same time. We can count on the rain when we desperately need it. We're going to get it. God's going to give it to us. But that's God's order. But there's no place where we see where man has blown up something. You know, like God, people claim the Big Bang is what created the universe. And myself, I say, yeah, that's a good way to explain it, because God spoke it and it happened. And that's as close to Big Bang as I think you can get. It's not quite what they're saying is the Big Bang, but that's kind of it. They're saying, evolutionists are saying, that there was this big explosion from a tiny atom where it just kept getting smaller and smaller until the weight came in on itself and it couldn't function any longer, so it just exploded. And out of that really tiny atom, that's where we get everything that we've got today. So that's something from nothing. But that just doesn't happen. We can't see order coming out of chaos. God spoke the world into existence, but it's through his wisdom. God Almighty, what do you believe? Literal 6 days, long ages. There's a lot of, even in the religious community, there's a lot of arguments. They say, well, the earth is 450 million years old, and the 6 days that are talked of in Genesis, those are long ages. And then there's people like myself, I say, no, those are literal 6 days, 24-hour days. And that's, after studying that and listening to people like Ken Ham, they point out that that's what it's talking about. And I usually ask people then, I said, do you believe that God's all-powerful? In our conversation at the coffee shop, like, do you believe that God is all-powerful? Yeah. Then why did it take him 6 days to even do this? God can do anything. He could have done it in 6 seconds if he wanted to. But he chose 6 days, and there's a reason for that in his scripture. He's got numbers mean something. That's why he did it. But what do you believe? Do you believe that God is all-powerful? If you say he's all-powerful, then he can do anything. He's not limited by space and time. He can do anything he wants to do. So if you want to create it in a literal 6 days, he can do it. Now, another argument that I use against people is I say, well, when God made Adam, how old was he? And the one fellow in particular said, well, I suppose he's 20, 21, 22. I said, no, when God made Adam, how old was he? Oh, he's just 1 day old. Yeah, but he made a grown man. If he made a grown man, why didn't he make a mature universe? And that's my argument. He can do anything he wants to do. If God has the power to create the universe and everything in it in 6 days, does he have the power to save? If God is all-powerful, of course, he can save. And like I say, I wonder why he took 6 days. Well, he did it for a reason, and numbers mean things, and he's set all this up for us. So, God, by his wisdom, created the universe. Then God has the right to control the universe. Romans 9:20 and Isaiah 29:16. But who are you, this is from Romans, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to him who formed it, why did you make me like this? In Ecclesiastes. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. That's the problem that the evolutionists have, is if they admit that God created the heavens and the earth through his wisdom, through his control, then God has the right to do what he wants to. People say, well, why did this child have to be born this way? Or why did I have to get cancer? Like, God has a reason. Just like Ann York, I don't know why she got that. I don't know. But maybe there's somebody that's been touched. I know the pastor's talked to a lot of people. Maybe somebody's been touched through that. I don't know. But God has the right to do that because he controls the universe. And God has a purpose for you. If God created you, he created you for a reason. And that's what we should be trying to find out, is what is the purpose that God has for us. I think I told Mick when you were in the hospital up in Fort Wayne, well, God has a reason for you being here. Find out what it is, do it, and get out. It also shows God's right to be worshipped, and that's the thing that the evolutionists don't want to do. They don't know it. They're worshiping Satan, but they think that they're their own God. But God, if he created the universe, then he has the right to be worshipped. And he says, have no other gods before me. Creation shows that God is God. Acts 4:24, disciples raised their voices to God and said, Lord, you are God who made the heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them. And this goes back to what I was reading you last week. This Dr. George Wald of Harvard University, winner of the Nobel Prize, so he's no slouch. He says, when it comes to the origin of life on this earth, there are only two possibilities: creation or spontaneous generation. That's evolution. There is no third way. Spontaneous generation was disproved 100 years ago, and I'll go through that with you in a little bit. But that leads us only to one conclusion, that of supernatural creation. We cannot accept that on a philosophical grounds, personal reasons. Therefore, we choose to believe the impossible, that life arose spontaneously by chance. And that was from the book Collapse of Evolution, but I think that was quoted from the Humanist magazine. So he said there's only two choices: that all life and non-life are accidental, or that God created all life and non-life. And either way you go, you're accepting by faith, because they don't have any proof. I can't, I can lay down a good foundation for you, but I can't prove by science that God exists. They can't prove that everything existed because of chance. So we're both taking it by faith. And that's how we please God. In fact, by faith is the only way that we can please God. I think it's Romans 14:21. That's one of my favorite verses. But it's only by faith that we can please God. Not by good works or anything like that. So I wanted, in the last little bit here, what I wanted to talk to you about is just how ridiculous the evolution thing is, and that give you something that you can take with you if you get in a conversation about evolution, again, with the youth or with people who are actually seeking the truth. Now, some are saying that the universe is 3.5 to 4.5 billion years old. Others are saying the universe has always been here, because they put a date stamp on it. And it was disproven that could actually happen like that. So now they're coming out and saying, well, it's always been here. And the earth, some are saying, is 450 million years ago, and that life started, I think, I may be wrong on this, but I think it started 100 million years ago. Some sort of life started, just by chance. Well, first off, is that with all the computers, all the brains that we have in the world today, they cannot produce life with all that intelligence. It was something they said happened by chance. They can't duplicate that. With all the intelligence they have, they can't produce it. Well, here's what has to happen. There's at least 20 elements, I think there's between 20 and 25 elements that are necessary in the body for life. There has to be those elements in the right proportion. They have to be at the right temperature and like that for them to join. But there's also something they call, and I don't understand all this, I understand enough that I can kind of talk about it, is that the things that are necessary for life to exist is protein molecules and amino acids. And there's, if I recall correctly, there are something like 80 known amino acids. And it takes 21 amino acids of a certain group, of a certain size. And there's left-handed amino acids and right-handed amino acids. And there has to be so many left-handed ones with a few right-handed ones, but they have to be joined together at the right place, again, at the right temperature, and they have to be, like they say this pond or whatever that supposedly got spontaneous evolution, creation. They have to be in there. Well, the chances of something like that happening by chance is 1 to 10 to the 100 millionth power. If you had an explosion like they say that created everything, and the explosion happened 1 microsecond after another, we still, at 4.5 billion years, we still wouldn't have enough time for that to happen. So it's 1 to 10 to the 100 millionth power. So that's impossible. They call that the law of probability, but in the law of probability, they say that when it gets past a certain number, it's no longer a probability, it's an impossibility. And that's what Wald was talking about, is that they knew 100 years ago, when all this math came out, they knew 100 years ago that spontaneous generation was impossible. Mathematically, it's impossible. And those people who are honest, and some of them are honest as far as what they say, they'll say that they know it's impossible, but they refuse to believe. They're willfully blind, and that's what we talked about last week. They're willfully blind. And it's because they want to continue on with the lifestyle that they're leading. So that concludes, and we're early, but that concludes what I had prepared. So do you guys have any questions on this? A lot of this stuff I remember from a long time ago, and I may remember if you got questions, but if you got anything, fire away. Jeannie.
My brother was Christian for a very long time. And he went in the Marines, and I don't know what happened. But he is dead set against God now. And last time we were together, he believed in evolution. He said it's not been disproved.
Yeah, the two of the best things, and I can put that on a piece of paper for you, but two things that stand out more than anything else is leaders in this evolutionary belief, especially from the Humanist magazine like that, they say themselves that they know it's impossible. It's been proven, they said 100 years ago. They know it's impossible for spontaneous life. And then the other thing is that number I gave you, that the chance of spontaneous life is 1 to 10 to the 100 millionth.
Yeah, right.
I'll put that, I'll give it to you next week. But that in itself is enough to show it's mathematically impossible. The universe is built on math. I'm convinced of that. The universe is built on math, but and through God's wisdom. But God used math. He uses numbers a lot in the Bible. So those are the two things. Their own words condemn them. They admit that it's impossible, but they refuse to believe. So when it comes down to that you know it's impossible, but I refuse to believe it, then what you're doing is you're denying God, and that's the rebellion state. And if somebody's looking for real proof, that's it. It's impossible because of the numbers, and their own people are saying that. But I'll give that to you next week.
So in reality, if they know that it's really real, then you would think that would be why do they continue to believe in something that doesn't even exist, you know?
They're having a pretty good time. Messes up their lifestyle. Because that's what's happening. We talked about George Soros last week, that is one of the richest men in the world, and he's 90-some years old. He'll probably live forever, but he's Satan's right-hand man, or he's a financial arm, but he's got anything he wants. The only thing you have to do is sell out your soul. That's the only thing you have to do. There's musicians, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard some musicians talking with a face that is serious, and they say that they sold their souls to Satan so that they can have fame. I won't mention the one name. I saw the video. This guy's a country star, and he's good. I mean, he won a lot of the awards, Singer of the Year and like that. But he was just as white-faced as he could be. He said, I made a deal with Satan. And there's a lot of rock stars, and sometimes you have to say, well, are they just using that for publicity, to make themselves look weird and like that? But I believe that all you have to do to be a real success in this world is to sell out to everything. Have no ethics. I don't know how long you're going to keep it, but you'll make it. That's all you have to do, is sell out your ethics and, worship the things of this world and not God. And I think they'll succeed.
I find it interesting that he used the spoken word.
Mm.
I mean, he could have done a million of that. He could have even just thought it to take this.
Yeah, the way that.
It's amazing to me how our words are so powerful. I mean, anyway, it's very.
The thing that I find fascinating on that is in the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I think what that's saying is that God is all-powerful, but Jesus is the one that created everything. Everything was created through him, by him, I think.
I turned 59 yesterday, and I praise God for my birthday because of everything I've been through. And when we were married, Jeffrey took us to the Creation
Mm-hmm.
Museum. And to be truthful, when I walked through there, I was talking to my husband,
Mhm.
And I even take, like the scripture, like in Psalms 139, says that, for thou hast possessed my reins, and I put my name in there. Thou hast covered me, my name, in my mother's womb, and I put my mom's name in there. And so it's so beautiful that, he woven, he wove us,
Mhm.
he knitted us, and he possessed our reins. And because I'm 59 now, I realized that God had me on his mind, and he knew me, he foreknew me. And it's just so beautiful how he's a God of wisdom, because when our children would come to us, they all had abuse, but you couldn't treat them the same.
Mhm.
So I say, God, I need your help. I need your wisdom, and he would give it to me, and he does that.
Mhm.
And that's what's so beautiful. He is a God of wisdom. And another thing that really touched my heart just tonight was when he created us and he made us, he gave us gifts even.
Mhm.
He even thought about the gifts.
That's the
that
purpose.
Yeah.
The purpose that he had a purpose for making us, and he gave us those gifts so we can complete that purpose. Whether we use that purpose for him or not, that's where the free will comes into it. Yeah, you can hear a lot of very talented people on the radio, and I listen to them, and the beautiful voice like that. But some of them are using the gift that God gave them for worldly pleasures. So yeah, but what it is, see, the world is, there's never a question about how the universe was created until around 1850, and then they started shooting at that foundation. The foundation of our Christian faith is Genesis 1. I mean, the book of Genesis. And shoot down that foundation, and the whole thing crumbles. That's what they're hoping for, but they can't shoot it down. But it's just they're just things like I asked Ken Ham once, just kind of facetiously. I said, why isn't there cubical planets? And he looked at me and he said, because God likes round things. I said, absolutely. That's his order. That's what he wants to do. Now, wouldn't you think if the world was created by chance that you'd see some cubical planets out there? No, everything's in order. Okay. Well, hopefully you got some information out of this. It'll do you some good. Let's see. Let me take a real quick look at some of my notes. No, I think I got it all. Okay. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all those that turned out tonight. Pray that there's something they can take with them, that they can defend the gospel. You say that we're always to be prepared to give an answer for the hope that